Pangu, the creation of heaven and earth. Chapter 1. The silent chaos. Long before time learned to flow, long before mountains found their shapes or rivers remembered their paths, there was only silence. Not the silence of night, nor the silence after snowfall, but a deeper stillness, an endless, breathing quiet that wrapped around everything like a soft, heavy blanket. This was the ancient state the old storytellers called Hundun, the primordial chaos. In this chaos, there was no sky to lift your gaze toward, no earth to rest your feet upon, no light, no darkness, because those things had not been born yet. Everything was folded into everything else. All things were possible, yet none had form. If one listened closely, it felt as though the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something, though it did not yet know what that something would be. And at the very center of this boundless, floating chaos, there lay a cosmic egg. It was enormous, vaster than mountains that would one day pierce the clouds, wider than oceans that would one day cradle storms. Smooth, warm, and round like a slumbering world, it drifted in the quiet void as if rocked gently by invisible waves. Inside this egg, wrapped in layer upon layer of swirling mist, a single being slept. He did not yet know his name. He did not yet know his purpose. But the universe did. And so it cradled him. The being inside the egg grew slowly, not with the hurried pace of mortals, but with the deep patience of the cosmos itself. Thousands of years passed, then tens of thousands, yet no sound disturbed the stillness. Chaos accepted him, embraced him, nourished him with all the raw forces of creation, light and shadow, warmth and cold, softness and fury. All opposites flowed around him, shaping him, strengthening him, and gradually, as the slumbering being grew, so too did the egg. Its shell thickened, glowing with faint veins of gold and black, the two eternal forces of yin and yang. Sometimes a faint tremor rippled across its surface, as if the sleeper within was dreaming. No one knows how long the being slept. To the cosmos, time had not yet stretched into something measurable. 1,000,000 years may have passed, or a heartbeat, or both. But eventually, something changed. The first shift in the void. One day, if it could be called a day, the chaos stirred. It was a small shift, delicate as the first ripple on still water. The cosmic egg pulsed softly. The swirling mists inside it turned a little faster, glowing faintly as if touched by an unseen spark. Inside, the sleeping being felt it. For the first time since the beginning of existence, a thought formed in his mind. It was simple, quiet, almost like a whisper blooming inside the dark. I am here. That single thought sent a gentle vibration through the egg. Then another. What am I? The being did not know where he was or what he was meant to be, but he knew that the warm darkness around him felt like a cradle and also like a cage. With slow, instinctive curiosity, he stretched. His massive limbs brushed the shell. It was smooth but unyielding, like the firm surface of a dream just about to break. He curled his fingers, long, strong, and still soft with newborn uncertainty. He pressed his palm against the inner wall. The egg responded with a soft hum, as though comforting him, but the being had already awakened something deeper inside himself, awareness. And awareness soon grew into restlessness. A world waiting to be born. The swirling mists inside the egg thickened and thinned, circling him in gentle spirals. He watched them, if watching was possible for someone whose eyes had never yet opened. They glowed softly, shifting from white to gold to deep swirling night. They wrapped around him like silken threads, whispering fragments of things that did not yet exist. The cool breath of wind, the warmth of fire, the murmur of flowing water, the patience of stone. He could sense all of it, tiny seeds of reality floating around him. But still, he felt confined. A feeling, soft but insistent, stirred in his immense heart. There is more beyond this. He did not know how he knew. He simply felt it, like destiny echoing from a place outside the darkness. The ancient storytellers would later say, before there was heaven or earth, Pangu already longed for them. For yes, the being inside the egg now had a name. He did not choose it. The universe whispered it into the deepest parts of his soul. Pangu, the first giant, the one who would divide all things. Though he had not yet opened his eyes, Pangu slowly brought his hand closer to his face. His breath was warm and heavy, each exhale sending ripples through the mists. He could feel his own heartbeat now, a slow, steady drum echoing through the stillness. As he listened to it, something awakened inside him. A spark. A purpose. It grew quietly at first, then brighter, stronger, impossible to ignore, like the first flame flickering in eternal night. Pangu felt something else too. Pressure. The egg that had nurtured him for countless ages was now small, far too small. Its walls pressed against him from all sides. His body, huge and powerful, had expanded with the energy of chaos. His arms were long like mighty tree trunks. His legs curled tightly to fit inside the limited space. He tried to shift. The shell held him firmly. He tried again. Still no movement. The shell was no longer a cradle. It had become a barrier. The first breath of the giant. Pangu inhaled deeply, and for the first time, sound rippled through the chaos. It was soft, like the hum of wind before it wakes the leaves, but it was the first sound the universe had ever known. With this breath, Pangu felt resolution form within him. Slowly, he opened his eyes. There was no light, yet the moment his eyes opened, the darkness changed. It felt thinner, weaker, as though two brilliant suns had just awakened inside the egg. He blinked once, and the swirling mists brightened, dancing as if in celebration. Pangu raised his head. It bumped against the shell. A deep rumble vibrated around him. Not enough space, not enough air, not enough world. Something waits beyond this, he thought, and I must reach it. The mists inside the egg began to churn rapidly, forming streams that wrapped around his limbs as if offering their support. A warm golden glow gathered around his hands. Chaos itself seemed to understand his wish. And then, Pangu heard it. A faint, distant sound. One that was not his own breath, nor the murmur of the swirling mists. It was the universe whispering to him. Break the darkness. The seed of courage. Pangu placed his massive palm against the inner wall of the egg. The contact sent a shock of sensation through him. Cold, alive, resistant. He pushed. The shell pushed back. He frowned, not in anger, but in concentration. His great shoulders tensed. His breath deepened. He pushed again. A small crack of light, barely a thread, barely a shimmer, ran across the shell. It was so faint it nearly disappeared. But Pangu saw it. Light. Light that had never existed before. The crack closed just as quickly. But Pangu had felt it. The boundary could break. And if it could break, then it must. His heart began to beat faster, each pulse echoing like distant thunder. The swirling mists glowed brighter, drawn toward him, gathering in the tips of his fingers like newborn lightning. From deep within the egg, a single word formed in his mind. Open. The universe echoed back. Open. Chaos held its breath, and Pangu made his decision. The quiet before creation. Before acting, Pangu closed his eyes once more. Not out of fear, but out of tenderness. He touched the walls of the egg gently, as if thanking it. It had sheltered him, protected him, giving him every force he would need to shape the world. But every cradle must eventually be left behind. Every dream must awaken into reality. Pangu leaned forward, resting his forehead against the shell. The warmth of his immense body radiated through the egg, sending soft shivers of energy into the surrounding chaos. For a moment, everything felt peaceful again, like drifting in a safe, silent ocean. But the peace was ready to change. He lifted his hand. Fingers curled. Muscles tightened. The swirling mist spiraled into him, filling his chest with power. Pangu drew one final long breath inside the darkness and opened his eyes wide, fierce with destiny. The time had come. The universe waited. He raised his fist, and in the deepest heart of chaos, the first giant prepared to strike. The creation of heaven and earth was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Birth of Pangu. The moment Pangu gathered his strength, the chaos around him seemed to pause, like a great ocean holding its breath, waiting for the first wave. The swirling mists inside the cosmic egg vibrated with a low, melodic hum, as though singing encouragement to the giant who had yet to take his first true step into existence. Pangu's enormous hands pressed softly against the inner shell. His fingers spread, feeling the smooth, ancient surface that had cradled him for countless ages. The warmth of the egg seeped into his palms, like the heartbeat of a mother comforting her child. For a brief, tender moment, Pangu hesitated, not because of fear, but out of gratitude. He bowed his head slightly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice deep and resonant, yet surprisingly gentle. It was the first spoken sound the universe had ever known, and the chaos trembled as if moved by emotion. Then Pangu lifted his gaze. His golden eyes glimmered with purpose. His massive lungs filled with the swirling breath of chaos. And he struck. The first blow. Pangu's fist collided with the shell in a shock of brilliance. The impact echoed through the void like rolling thunder, thunder that had never existed until that moment. A crack of light ripped across the egg. Then, at first, trembling, uncertain, like the first thread of dawn breaking through an endless night. Pangu drew back and struck again. This time, the crack flared brighter, widening with a sharp, singing sound, like crystal under immense pressure. Sparks of raw creation burst from the opening and scattered through the darkness in swirling clouds. Each spark carried a fragment of what would one day become stars, rivers, mountains, and wind. Pangu's breath grew heavier. His heart pounded with determination. Once more he struck. The crack split open, and light poured through it. It was soft at first, like a candle awakening in a cavern. Then brighter, warmer, growing until it rushed around him like a tidal wave of radiance. The swirling mist inside the egg spun wildly, as though rejoicing at the birth they had long awaited. Pangu shielded his eyes, not from pain, but from wonder. It was the first light he had ever seen, the first light anything had ever seen. He reached toward it. The shell crumbled, and everything changed. The falling of the shell. What followed was neither explosion nor silence, but something in between, like the sigh of a world being born. The fragments of the cosmic egg shattered outward, dissolving into mist, vapor, and luminous dust that flowed through chaos like rivers of liquid light. Some fragments rose, drifting upward with feather-like grace. Others sank, dissolving into deep, weighty darkness. Pangu floated in the center of it all, his immense form unfolding fully for the first time. He stretched his arms wide, feeling space expand around him. He extended his legs, and finally the pressure of confinement lifted from his body. For the first time since time itself awakened, Pangu was free. He inhaled deeply. The light flowed into him like warm air after a storm. He exhaled, and the breath of chaos rippled outward, making the drifting dust swirl. But as the shell dissolved, something strange began to happen. The pieces of the egg did not move randomly. They separated. Those that were light, warm, and bright drifted upward. Those that were heavy, cool, and dark fell downward. The universe was dividing itself, splitting into two vast realms. Pangu watched, his eyes filled with quiet awe. "That is the light," he murmured softly, "the beginning of heaven." He looked downward at the dark, dense fragments sinking below. "And that is the heavy," he whispered, "the beginning of earth." Though heaven and earth had just begun to separate, they wavered unsteadily, soft, shapeless, fragile like newborn creatures still learning how to breathe. The bright mists above trembled, as if unsure whether they should rise or fall. The dark mists below roiled restlessly, surging like waves that might swallow the world back into chaos. Pangu felt the universe shake with uncertainty. He understood something instinctively. If he did not act now, heaven and earth might collapse into each other and return to chaos. And so, the giant took his first true step into creation. Pangu stands between the realms. Pangu planted his feet firmly upon the forming earth, though at this time, Earth was only a heavy cloud of dark mist, swirling, thick, and unstable. It wavered beneath his weight, dipping and trembling, yet holding him all the same. He raised his hands to the bright mists above. Heaven shook. Earth trembled. Pangu straightened his back, slowly, carefully, pushing upward with the strength that had been nourished by chaos for countless ages. His spine stretched. His arms reached skyward. His legs pressed downward, anchoring him. Heaven rose. Earth descended. The separation grew wider. A beam of brilliance pierced the void above, marking the first true sky. Pangu took another slow breath. The universe shifted with him, stabilizing like a ship catching its balance on open water. The bright clouds grew lighter, drifting higher and forming the early layers of heaven. The dark mists thickened and clung together, sinking as they molded the first layers of earth. Still, the two realms trembled, like a newborn animal learning to stand. Pangu understood. This was only the beginning. The worlds were too young, too soft. They needed time to grow firm. And while they grew, he would stand between them. The first day. Pangu's body, already immense, began to grow even larger as he held the realms apart. It was not a growth of hunger or desire, but of purpose, like a seed sprouting toward the sun. Each day, he stretched a little taller, pushing heaven higher, pressing earth lower. The storytellers would later say he grew one zung each day, but here, in the mythic stillness before numbers existed, the growth felt endless, gentle and steady, like watching a mountain stretch toward the stars. His legs lengthened, his back broadened, his arms reached ever upward. The space between heaven and earth widened. With every breath he took, the universe settled a little more. Bright vapors gathered beneath his palms, swirling into sky. Dark clouds swirled around his feet, thickening into land. Pangu felt none of this as a burden. It felt right, natural, as though this was the purpose he had been born for. He sometimes gazed upward at the glowing mists, watching them slowly transform. Sometimes he lowered his head to observe the dark clouds thickening below. And sometimes, with his deep, resonant voice, he hummed softly, a sound that made the early universe tremble like a gong touched by the wind. These hums or lullabies sung to heaven and earth, helping them grow stronger. The lonely middle. Though his task was noble, Pangu was alone. The heavens above him were vast, empty and quiet. No stars yet glittered. No sun warmed his face. No moon softened the shadows. There were only drifting clouds of bright mist, beautiful but silent. Below, earth was a swirling mass of dark, heavy vapor. It pulsed like a sleeping beast, waiting for its true form. But it could not speak yet. It had no mountains, no oceans, no rivers, no soil, only weight, only potential. Pangu stood between the two. Sometimes He felt a soft longing inside his immense heart, a longing for companionship. Life had not been born yet. He was the first, the only. But whenever that loneliness whispered through him, something else whispered back from the universe. We grow with you. Heaven sent down a warm breeze that brushed his cheeks. Earth rumbled softly beneath his feet, steadying him. And Pangu smiled. Even in silence, he felt supported. The first shaping of reality. As heaven rose and earth settled, Pangu noticed small changes. The bright mists above began forming layers, first thin as silk, then thicker like veils. Their movements became smoother, less chaotic. They drifted gently, guided by his steady presence. Below, the dark vapors curled, twisted, and coiled upon themselves. They clung together, slowly shaping patches of firmness, early hints of land, though still soft as clay. Pangu felt the change and adjusted himself accordingly. Sometimes he pushed heaven upward more strongly, giving it room to expand. Sometimes he pressed earth downward more firmly, spreading its weight evenly. He became the pillar of the world, the silent guardian holding everything in balance. And as the days passed, though days had not yet found names, Pangu grew taller still. His head brushed the forming sky, his feet sank deeper into the thickening earth. He was an axis, a bridge, a living mountain connecting realms. A quiet moment of wonder. One lull in the great stillness stands out in the old tales. Pangu lifted his gaze upward. There, far above his head, a small sphere of bright mist pulsed, softly, rhythmically, like a glowing heart. It was new. He did not understand what it was, but he felt its warmth brush against his face. It made him feel comforted, almost cherished. He reached toward it with a single massive finger. The glowing sphere quivered gently, like a baby touching the hand of its parent. Pangu smiled. Then, lifting his other hand, he guided heaven upward a little more, creating space for that tiny sphere to drift higher. The light trembled in gratitude and floated away, joining the upper layers of the forming sky. No star existed yet, no sun, no moon. But Pangu felt the first spark of what would someday become celestial bodies, born from fragments of the broken egg, finding new purpose. And he felt peaceful. The burden that was not a burden. The weight of heaven above him grew heavier each day. The density of earth below him grew thicker, more solid. But Pangu never bent. He never trembled. With every passing moment, the universe strengthened, and so did he. Each breath he drew filled him with the essence of creation. Each hum he released steadied the shaking realms. Heaven rose, earth fell. Slowly, gently, beautifully. The separation widened until the realms no longer threatened to collapse. The chaos between them thinned. The mists cleared. The world, through Pangu's endless patience, began to take shape. And yet, this was only the earliest stage of creation. The giant would stand between heaven and earth for 18,000 years, but those years had not yet begun. For now, he had just been born, just awakened, just taken his first breath of freedom. And the universe, newborn and trembling, rested gently in his enormous hands. The story of creation was only beginning. Chapter 3. Pangu lifts the sky. 18,000 years of creation. When Pangu first opened his eyes inside the newborn world, the boundary between sky and earth was as fragile as a breath. The swirling vapors of the cosmic egg had settled into two vast realms, the clear, rising chi above and the heavy, sinking chi below. But these realms were still too near each other, pressing, shifting, trembling like two restless tides. If left untouched, they would collapse again, plunging everything back into the deep, eternal darkness. And so, in the quiet beginning, with nothing but the newborn world echoing around him, Pangu took his first slow, steady breath. The sky rippled, the earth hummed, and creation waited for him to move. The first effort. Pangu placed his large, steady hands against the firm but unsettled ground, and he rose to his full height. He was already enormous, towering above the rolling clouds that had not yet floated upward. His bones glowed faintly with the essence of mountains. His blood carried the warmth of newborn suns. His hair drifted like constellations. Yet even he was small compared to the endless sky that hovered only a short distance above the earth. Pangu looked up. The sky looked back, fragile and trembling. The earth looked up at him, heavy and waiting. And Pangu understood. He pressed his feet deep into the forming soil, lifted his arms, and pushed the sky upward with all the strength flowing through his colossal frame. At first the sky resisted, clinging to the earth with threads of unshaped chi. But Pangu pushed again, slow, deliberate, steady. A soft crackle echoed through the world. Light poured through the growing space. And for the first time, the sky began to rise. Pangu's muscles strained, but his expression remained calm, almost peaceful. This was his purpose, his role in the great unfolding of existence. The earth thickened beneath him, deepening its roots. The sky brightened above him, expanding its reach, and Pangu stood between them like a living pillar. A world that was not yet stable. Even as the sky rose, its weight threatened to fall again. The earth shuddered under the pressure. Sometimes the layers of chi tried to mix, swirling into chaos. Other times, cracks appeared along the edges of new mountains. The young world was still fragile, like wet clay before it settles. Pangu felt every tremor. When a mountain ridge trembled, the vibration reached his bones. When the sky wavered, the pressure brushed his shoulders like a heavy, uncertain hand. When the deep earth shifted, he felt its heartbeat through the soles of his feet. To keep balance, he widened his stance. To keep the sky rising, he straightened his spine. To keep creation stable, he breathed slowly, his breaths becoming the rhythm of the world. Each breath lasted hundreds of years. Each heartbeat echoed through valleys that had not yet formed. Each movement shaped the future of all things. The slow growth of the world. Time in those days flowed differently. It stretched like silk, long and luminous. It folded like mist, thick and quiet. Every day the sky rose one zong higher. Every day Pangu grew one zong taller. And because his strength deepened along with his height, he could continue pushing the sky upward without rest. A zong each day, a zong each night, a steady, eternal rhythm. 10 years passed, 100 years passed, 1,000 years passed. The world softened. The land grew layers. River channels began to carve themselves through the dust. The sky became firmer, clearer, brighter.
But Pangu did not stop. He could not. Creation was far from complete. After 10,000 years, the sky had risen to heights unimaginable. But the earth, too, had expanded, its foundation thickening with each passing era. Mountains formed along Pangu's knees. Lakes settled around his ankles. Forests had begun to gather the courage to sprout. Pangu no longer stood in a void. He stood in a world taking shape around him. Still he pushed. Still the sky rose. Still the earth grew.
The 18,000-year vigil. For 18,000 years, Pangu continued his sacred task. 18,000 years without bending his knees. 18,000 years without resting his arms. 18,000 years with the sky resting gently on his palms. During those immense ages, the world transformed slowly, like ink spreading across a scroll. Mountains formed from his footsteps. Where Pangu shifted his weight, the earth beneath him strengthened. Where he planted his heel, stone compressed. Where he leaned slightly, valleys formed from the pressure. His very presence sculpted the land, though he moved no more than he had to. Even his smallest adjustment echoed for centuries. Rivers are born from his breathing. When Pangu inhaled, the wind curled inward, drawing mist and coolness. When he exhaled, gusts swept across the land, carving paths that would later become the first rivers. His breath shaped currents long before water ever flowed. Seasons form from the heat of his body. The warmth radiating from his chest flowed outward, softening the world like spring. Then the warmth faded, allowing a gentle coolness to settle, creating the earliest sense of autumn. The world adapted to him, learning to shift between warmth and cool as his energy fluctuated with the millennia. Stars responded to his thoughts. When Pangu looked upward, the remnants of chaos scattered into tiny sparks, stars that clung to the fabric of the sky. When he looked downward, the earth steadied beneath his gaze, finding confidence. The young world mirrored his awareness. Storms, winds, and the chaos that fought back. Not everything accepted order so easily. Fragments of the ancient chaos still drifted across the world, clouds of wild chi, unpredictable and fierce. Sometimes they pushed downward, trying to drag the sky back toward the earth. Other days they coiled upward, attempting to loosen Pangu's grip. Thunder crackled with leftover fury. Whirlwinds arose where the elements clashed. The earth groaned as if unsure it wished to remain solid. Pangu faced these rebellions with calm strength. When storms formed, he lowered his brow, and the lightning bent away. When the wind raged, he exhaled slowly, and it gentled into a breeze. When chaos gathered in dark spirals, he spoke, not with words, but with the deep resonance of his spirit. The chaos remembered the ancient stillness of the cosmic egg, and it retreated. Piece by piece, year by year, Pangu tamed the stubborn remnants of the old world. His presence became the boundary through which disorder could not pass. Loneliness in the endless sky. Though Pangu was strong, the long ages were not entirely easy. The world was silent. No birds called from branches. There were no branches yet. No creatures wandered the ground. There were no creatures yet. The only sound was the deep hum of creation, and the only movement was the rise of the sky. Sometimes Pangu wondered what would one day fill this world he was building. Would mountains echo with life? Would rivers sing? Would the sky host flying beings who understood its vastness? Would creatures walk the valleys, climb the hills, stand by the sea? He held these questions quietly in his heart, asking them to the sky he lifted and the earth he stood upon. Though neither answered, they held his questions gently, as if saving them for a time when the world was ready. In these moments, Pangu felt less alone. Even silence can be a companion when it carries the promise of future life. The sky reaches its final height. 18,000 years passed like a slow, luminous dream. The sky had risen to its destined height. The earth had settled into strong, countless layers. The chaos had retreated to the unreachable corners of the universe. Pangu stood taller than mountains, broader than horizons, older than anything that had ever existed. He no longer had to push the sky. It stayed where he had placed it. The world was finally stable, balanced, complete. He lowered his arms. For the first time in creation's history, Pangu rested. He looked around at the world he had shaped. Wide plains glowing softly beneath the early light. Young mountains breathing in the cool air. A sky so deep and blue it seemed endless. A quiet peace fell across all things. Pangu felt it settle over him like a warm cloak. The world no longer needed him to hold the sky up. It had learned to stand on its own. A moment of stillness before the next beginning. Pangu stood in the vast world he had created, not as a prisoner of duty, but as a guardian who had fulfilled his role. He knew the next chapter of creation was approaching. The birth of winds, the awakening of sun and moon, the forming of seas, the rise of beings who would walk the land. All of that would come after him. Pangu understood that his task was ending, but creation's journey was only beginning. He placed his massive hand on the earth, feeling its heartbeat steady and strong. He lifted his gaze to the sky, admiring its height, far beyond even his reach. For the first and last time, Pangu allowed himself a gentle smile. The world was ready, and he would soon give it everything he had left. Chapter 4. The Final Transformation. Pangu becomes the world. When the sky had reached its destined height, and the earth had settled into deep foundations, a profound stillness embraced the newborn world. It was unlike the silence of chaos, heavy and suffocating. This was a new quiet, gentle, warm, filled with breath and promise. Pangu stood in this calm dawn of creation, towering like a living mountain between heaven and earth. His task, spanning 18,000 years, had finally come to a peaceful close. No longer did the sky tremble under his palms. No longer did the earth shift under his feet. Everything held firm, steady, complete. In that boundless quiet, Pangu felt a new sensation rising within him, something soft and inevitable. It was not fatigue nor sorrow. It was simply the understanding that his purpose was fulfilled and that all creation rests upon cycles of giving, changing, becoming. He looked one last time at the sky he had lifted. He looked one last time at the earth he had shaped. And he whispered, not with his voice, but with his spirit, "Let the world continue." The world listened, and Pangu began his final transformation. A peaceful falling of the giant. Pangu's body, colossal and ancient, had carried the weight of heaven for longer than any measure of time. Now, with his purpose complete, he slowly allowed himself to sink down, carefully, gracefully, like a mountain gently lowering itself into the earth. Each movement resonated across the land. His knees touched the ground. His great hands rested upon the soil. His back curved, no longer bearing the sky, and his immense form stretched across the land like a sleeping ridge. When he finally lay still, a hush sped across all creation. Wind paused its wandering, light softened, even the young mountains seemed to bow. This was not the fall of a titan. This was the final breath of a creator offering himself to his creation. The breath that became the winds. Pangu exhaled once more, a long, deep breath that carried the warmth of all his years, the calm of his spirit, and the final echo of his strength. As it left him, the breath rose upward, spreading across the sky with a gentle sweep. The breath swirled, curled, danced, and dispersed into countless currents. Soft breezes were born from the edges of that exhale. Strong winds were shaped in its center. High above, the breath stretched into the invisible patterns that would forever guide the weather. Each wind carried a hint of Pangu's spirit, steady, calm, watchful. Sometimes, a passing breeze still whispers across the mountains, as though calling his name. His voice becomes thunder. As Pangu's final heartbeat dissolved into the air, a deep rumble echoed across the horizon. It was not frightening. It was like a great drum marking the world's new beginning. His voice, once capable of calming chaos, drifted into the sky and settled within the clouds. There it became the force behind thunder, the sound of the heavens reminding the world of its ancient guardian. When lightning flashes, the sky recalls Pangu's determination. When thunder rolls, it is his voice continuing to speak. His eyes become sun and moon. Pangu had always gazed upon heaven and earth with equal care. Even in his final moment, that gaze did not fade. It changed. His left eye glowed softly, illuminating the sky with warm radiance. It rose, expanded, brightened, becoming the sun, the great light that would govern day. His right eye cooled into silver tranquility. It lifted, curved, shimmered, becoming the moon, the gentle guide of night. From that moment on, the world had cycles of light and shadow, warmth and coolness, day and night, like the steady rhythm of Pangu's former heartbeat. Children born ages later would look up at the sky and sense the watchfulness in both sun and moon, though they would not know its source. His blood becomes rivers and seas. The blood that once carried life and heat through Pangu's vast body began to flow outward. It seeped gently at first, then gathered into streams, then rivers. It traveled across the land, carving paths, shaping valleys, filling basins. His blood became the rivers that twist through mountains. It became the seas that glitter under sunlight. It became the oceans that stretch beyond horizon after horizon. Wherever water flowed, life would one day follow. And so Pangu's vitality remained forever woven into the world, moving endlessly from mountain to shore, from spring to storm, from rain to river. His breath becomes clouds and mist. As the last warmth left his lungs, a swirl of pale vapor drifted upward. It accumulated, layered, scattered, and merged again. From this vapor formed the clouds, soft white clusters that drift across the sky. From its cooler edges came the mist, gentle veils that wrap around mountains in the early morning. These clouds would one day carry rain. The mist would refresh forests and nourish moss. Both would bring softness to the land when heat grew too intense. Every cool cloud on a summer day is a gift from Pangu. His hair becomes the stars. Pangu's hair, dark as the night before creation, drifted upward in countless strands. As they touched the sky, each strand shimmered, brightened, and held its place. One by one, they transformed into the stars, a grand map of lights scattered across the heavens. Some stars formed patterns that mirrored Pangu's thoughts. Some gathered like clusters he once watched while holding the sky. Some fell into trails that would guide travelers thousands of years later. Every glimmer in the night sky is a spark of the ancient giant. Even the faintest star holds a memory of him. His skin becomes the earth's surface. Pangu's skin, textured by endless years of supporting the sky, softened and merged with the land beneath him. It spread outward, becoming the soil, rich and fertile. It formed the fields where plants would one day grow. It became the plains, stretching far beyond sight. From his skin came the ground that supports every living thing, the surface where future beings would walk, build, dream, and call home. His muscles become the mountains. The powerful muscles that once held the sky aloft tightened one last time, then relaxed into the earth. Where they settled, mighty ridges rose, peaks formed, valleys deepened, stone gathered and stacked itself into towering shapes. His shoulders became mountain ranges. His arms became long ridgelines stretching across the continent. His chest rose into vast highlands. Every mountain carried a fraction of Pangu's ancient strength. Every cliff carried his determination. Every echo among the peaks carried his memory. Travelers who listen carefully may still feel the old giant breathing in the wind. His bones become the pillars of the earth. Pangu's bones, dense and luminous, sunk deep into the land. As they settled, They hardened into granite, jade, and metals unseen before. His spine formed the oldest mountains, unyielding, unbreakable. His ribs became supporting ridges running north to south. His hands became plateaus. His legs became the strongest pillars beneath the surface. The world's great mineral veins, gold, silver, iron, copper, were born from the essence of his bones, and the deepest caves still resonate with faint echoes of his ancient frame. His veins become paths for life. As Pangu's transformation continued, the channels that once carried energy through him spread beneath the land like a hidden network. These became the dragon lines, mystical currents of chi that run through the world. Along these lines, weather changes. Along these lines, plants flourish more richly. Along these lines, mountains rise in harmony. Even in distant ages when humans learned to read the land, they unknowingly followed Pangu's ancient veins. His flesh becomes the fertile world. The flesh that wrapped Pangu's immense form dissolved gently into the land, nourishing it with deep vitality. Forests sprouted where his arms had rested. Grasslands grew where his chest had touched the earth. Fertile plains emerged where his legs had lain. His body, once the pillar between sky and earth, became the foundation for all future life. From the nutrients of his flesh, the first roots would one day take hold. From those roots, plants would grow. From plants, animals would rise. And from animals, humankind would eventually appear. Thus, Pangu became the world's first ancestor, not through lineage, but through creation. His spirit becomes the guardian of all things. Even after his body had transformed into mountains and seas, Pangu's spirit did not fade. It drifted upward, weightless and vast, merging with the sky that he had once lifted. It expanded beyond shape, beyond form, becoming a presence that watched over the world silently. When storms brew, his spirit steadies the winds. When mountains tremble, he calms their roots. When drought threatens the land, clouds gather as though remembering an ancient promise. Pangu's spirit became the guardian chi that wraps around the world like an invisible embrace. Though no eyes can see him, all life feels the stability he left behind. A world that breathes because of him. Now the world was complete. The sky, his lifted arms, arched in a vast blue dome. The sun and moon, his eyes, guided the passage of time. The mountains, his bones, held the earth steady. The oceans, his blood, flowed with rhythm. The winds, his breath, moved with gentle intention. The stars, his hair, glittered with ancient memory. The soil, his skin, invited life to grow. Everything around whispered of Pangu. Everything carried the imprint of his sacrifice. Everything existed because he gave himself entirely to creation. The first quiet dawn of the new world. With Pangu's transformation complete, the world entered its first true morning. The sun rose warm and golden. The moon faded gently into the brightening sky. Clouds drifted like soft white feathers. Mountains stretched upward, their shadows long and calm. Rivers shimmered under the new light. The seas whispered softly along their shores. Though no creatures yet walked the land, the world breathed slowly, peacefully, like a child sleeping before its first dream. Everything waited for the next chapter. Everything stood ready to welcome future life. Everything carried Pangu's spirit woven into its core.